My goodness, we're back again. Here we are. It's the 27th of December. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Feed My Sheep, Earthquake Reports, and more. And we've got some very significant changes that have occurred following this 7.0 earthquake that the agency's called a 6.4, and we're going to get into that. I hope everybody's had a pretty good Christmas season, time with family and such. It's there's many can count their blessings, and there are many that have also had a very tough time through this period. The cold back east, the damage in this earthquake. There's a lot of people that are having a tough time through this Christmas. So hopefully you can help out those that are around you and get help if you need it yourselves. We'll be back after prayer. No, we're going to stay here and pray. Please join me. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you continue to provide this program, that all who are led here are able to see what's going on so they can prepare as they need to. And we thank you for your continued protection. We ask that you take all the glory for this program. And Jesus, we thank you for shepherding us to all the information that we need to find. There's a lot going on that most aren't aware of, and you've led us to that, and we appreciate it. And Holy Spirit, we appreciate the understanding that you give as well of all of these events that we can share, and we ask that you would share this understanding with all of our viewers as well. All of this in your name, Jesus, and thank you. Amen. So back to this earthquake and the location of it. Everybody pretty much knows by now it's off the end of the Mendocino. But this earthquake has spread, and there's unreported activity that's going on. So we're looking at about 140 earthquakes in this cluster here, but it's now up well over 160, and there's a lot of unreported activity. We're going to get into that, and this is the beginning of that. This is just east of the Kneeland Airport, and this is just on the northeast edge of the earthquake swarm. And these seismograms today, I'm not going to be able to enlarge them, so I'm just going to be showing them to you here. But look at the dramatic increase in the activity. So that's very significant. And we pointed to the direction of the swarm and the size of the swarm, that this is very likely following a fault in the Mendocino plate that is subducting under the continental plate, under the North American plate. And that's what we're seeing here, is that we have a tremendous amount of vibrational activity that's following the earthquake, that we're having a change. What we're seeing, because there is so much tremor activity, this is Rio del south central of the ongoing earthquake swarm. And just a huge increase in tremor levels through here. I've never seen this before in this area, but the amount that's through the rest of Northern California is quite incredible. Looking north up to McKinleyville, we're another 30 or 40 miles up the coast near Clam Beach, and now we're seeing some earthquakes here and very high tremor levels. And you can see the site's not even over amplitude. The baseline comes in normal through here, and otherwise it's just very intense activity, a very high level of activity. So this is spreading to the north, and this should be showing earthquakes in the area of McKinleyville, and they're not showing up from the agency. So this swarm is spreading north. And if we're getting subduction movement and force transfer to the north, then we're getting some sliding action of the continent over the Pacific plate heading up to the north. We're getting a spread of activity from this initial earthquake. And from the beginning, I called this a subduction earthquake. And we're seeing a process of subduction occurring, where it's actually going on in front of our eyes. We're seeing subduction, not the big Cascadia, but we're seeing some precursor activity to the Cascadia. Many will be aware of the slow slip that's affected all along the Wandapuka plate. Well, this is in effect, rather than a slow slip, a fast creep. We're having a period of relatively fast continental movement right now. And it's happening primarily in California, Northern California. So moving north and inland, we're seeing movement to the north of Callahan. Now keep an eye on this. We're going to come back to this in our next program because this is yesterday's information. I loaded this all up yesterday and the program was freezing so bad we had to redo it. So I'm redoing yesterday's program, yesterday's information. If you remember Callahan here and look at it later on, it's going to be incredible. Mount Lassen. And Callahan is getting over towards north of Redding area. It's actually northwest of Redding. Mount Lassen seismograms, they're all stuck on the 22nd. They were yesterday and they are today. So this is from west of Hat Creek to the north of Mount Lassen. And we can see the activity is increasing through the seismogram to where we picked this up at. I think I loaded this up about 5 in the afternoon, something like that. Let's see, local time now, 5:30 in the afternoon. And Black Butte at the west base of Mount Shasta was also very busy. You can see just a significant increase starting here. So if you get, some of this is going to be plate movement, but some of it at the volcanoes is also going to be magma infill. We're now 7 days after, it's the 27th. The earthquake was on the 20th. And so you have the earthquake. If you have subduction, then it's going to feed a little bit of extra crust under the volcanoes, and that's going to cause volcanic reactivation. And that's what I've been saying is precursor to the Cascadia as well, that we get volcanic reactivation from the process of subduction, which is the very process that built the Cascades Range volcanoes and the Sierra Nevadas and the volcanic fields, not Long Valley Caldera, but the volcanic fields in the area of Lassen, Shasta, and Medicine Lake. So that whole Sierra Nevada's west process, that's all subduction. That's all built from the very type of earthquake occurring that we just saw, where the crust slides and feeds, and it shoves more crust down underneath the volcanoes. And because it's 70 miles, if you move an inch of crust, you've suddenly released an incredible amount of water into the system. It's only 4% water, that magma, but that makes it much more volatile when you add more water, and it creates a rise in the volcanoes, and that increases activity. And we're seeing the proper duration of delay, about a 6 days delay, because that activity has to push up through many miles of crust and volcanoes in order to get to the surface. Now it's going to displace what's above it because it's got a whole bunch of material above. So just because it is pushing up from below doesn't mean it have to come all the way from the bottom to the top. But it takes a while to stress the top enough to push it up and through and extrude more material. So here's the same site. We're at Black Butte, looking from USGS, and you can see that it was picking up in here. This is the north base of Mount Shasta, and look at the significant increase. I don't have the good USGS sites that I used to have for Mount Shasta, but this site works really well. And that's a massive, I haven't seen this level of activity increase, and it's worse. That was yesterday, and it's worse today. This is northeast of Mount Shasta by about 5 miles, and you can see a very significant increase as well here. Now we're about 12 miles northeast of Mount Shasta, due east of Mount Hebron. So, and again, we're building activity. You can see the spread of it. You can see where it starts The further away you get from the volcanoes, it starts a little later. This is north of Mount Shasta by about 6 miles. Whoops, this site got significantly busier than this today, through the activity today. This is about 4 miles west of Mount Hebron. I know I'm going through these fairly quickly, but I've loaded a lot of material on here. This is north-northwest of Mount Shasta by about 7 miles, or a mile or two east-northeast of Grenada. And this is Medicine Lake volcano. Now this is way over amplitude. Okay, so don't think this is an eruption level of activity, because it's not. It's simply an over amplitude seismogram. If we look at the same activity by USGS, we can see that it's large. They only show us a couple of hours here. And that's an issue that we're having with many USGS sites. We're not getting full pages in the Lassen and Shasta area, but and Medicine Lake. But regardless, this shows you the activity is not massive. It's large. It's significant, but it's not massive. So we're getting uplift fracturing in the area of Medicine Lake volcano from infill, and significant amounts of it. Now, this is about 25 miles east of Mount Lassen at Stone's Landing in, I think it's Eagle Lake. And we can see that activity spreading to the east. Okay, it arrives earlier to the west. This is all volcanic fields area, north and east of Lassen and Mount Shasta. Just incredible amounts of volcanic fields in the area. So it shouldn't be a surprise when you get reactivation, when you're getting reactivation of the volcanoes that are in the very same fields. Now this is northeast of Susanville. Now this is another over amplitude site. It's not this busy. If we look at the same site down below, it's not this slow. It's halfway between these two. That's what the activity actually is, but it's still a very significant increase in activity. And all of these sites, we're getting, this is all the same day. Loyalton also had the same thing. So we had the magnitude 7 earthquake, and then 6 days later, all of these sites, you can see them firing up on day 6. So if you move the crust underneath the volcanoes, you add more crust to the volcanoes, they're going to reactivate, and it's going to take something like 6 days. Here's Verde Peak. Verde Peak is north of Lake Tahoe, very near the Nevada-California border. I think it's about 30 miles north. West of Walker Lake in Nevada. Now this is a site that gets busy as well. And it's just increasing here. You can see this is the real onset at the bottom, but it's already flaring up for, about 8 hours. No, 10 hours, about 10 hours. So 10 hours into activity. Mono Lake has been turned way down, just starting to get active from activity from Mono Lake. Now this site is very much to the east, farther away, and it's not surprising that it reacts later. The site that really surprised me was Sutter Buttes, and this is Sutter Buttes here. And this is very significant because what we've got mixed into this is we're starting to get steam releases in here. So this site is starting to blow off steam. We've got fault shift type activity, and we've got earthquakes going on here. These are steam releases in here. These ones in black coming down from the line. Not sure about this red one. I think we're too much into tremors to really know what's going on. But we're getting some steam release on the black line down here as well. Now, I had a little look through the Cascades. It wasn't significant. There was Cinnamon Butte, which is north of Crater Lake, had a bit of a flare-up of activity. I just wanted to see if there was matching activity in the Cascades range, because Mount Shasta and Mount Lassen are both part of the Cascades range. They're the southern end of it. That's what the professionals say. I include the Sierra Nevadas because they were all built by subduction, and we're going to have a look at the Sierra Nevadas in the next program, and this is a very significant program coming up. The development today from what we saw yesterday, which is what we're looking at yesterday's activity right now. It's very significant. I've never seen activity blow up to this level in a short space of time. So here's Newberry craters. Small increase in activity down at the bottom, not worrisome. From the spider on the rising dome of Mount St. Helens, a small increase. Now it is interesting, a scientific interesting or geologic interest, this quiet zone here. We see this as we go north from Mount St. Helens. So just watch what's happening here on the seismograms. Johnson Ridge Observatory, we're heading north away from Mount St. Helens. So we've got that same quiet period in there. And yes, it's increased in activity and then it's dropped off. North to Trade Dollar Lake, we're now another, I think we're stepping away another 15 miles or something like that. And this site is a little over amplitude at the top. It's not this busy. But look at this quiet period in here, the same as we were seeing, not at Johnson Ridge exactly, but it's almost an exact match for what we were seeing from the spider on the rising dome. Now, they've got a new site at the southwest base of Mount Rainier, and they've given it quite an interesting name. It's called Gobbler's Knob. So this is the southwest base of Mount Rainier. And you can see the activity, like Mount St. Helens, got very busy through to here and then just dropped right off, and there it is. And that's the same as, almost the exact same as two sites and very close to the third site that we looked, Johnson Ridge Observatory, just doesn't have that activity right down here at the bottom. So Mount Adams and Mount St. Helens are joined by a magma channel or a lava tube, and that's been proven. And then there's also been proven that Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, and Mount Adams all share a magnetic anomaly. And magma nearer the surface has higher conductivity, and so it produces a magnetic anomaly. So there's some speculation based on that evidence that there's a shared magma system between Mount St. Helens, Mount Rainier, and Mount Adams. And this is further evidence of that we have this change in here that matches Mount St. Helens. Now, Mount Rainier has gotten very busy. And we're going to get back to this, but this is a huge jump in activity. And why we've had the jump in activity, it seems that it must be coincidental with what happened rather than cause and effect with California. We've skipped so many areas that would have activity, and now Mount Rainier is active. So I don't tie this to the California earthquake, but it is a very significant increase. We've seen increases like this at Mount Rainier, but this is a matching high level event that we're having at Mount Rainier. And I'm going to have to go back and look at this. This is yesterday's. Going to have to go back and look at today's. I've been tracking some very, very significant activity in Northern California, so I just haven't had the time to look at Mount Rainier yet. I will get to it. So lots of steam blowing off from Mount Rainier, my goodness. Now, the other site that was very busy, and you'll notice I skipped Sisters, I skipped Mount Hood. They just weren't that busy. Normal levels of activity. They're active, but they're not showing exceptional activity. Wrangell Island actually had an increase. This is north of Haida Gwaii, or the Queen Charlotte Islands, in southeast Alaska. And it looks like we're actually getting some steam release signals from Mount Wrangell. It's actually, it's south, I think it's 7.25 miles south of Wrangell itself, but it's a big volcanic island up there, rising out of the ocean. Mount Constitution was also flaring up with activity yesterday, and so was Sugarloaf Peak, which is southeast of Glacier Peak. So we can see the activity increase there. So there's what we have, and we're going to get back to updates. And here's some of what's going on, what's coming up. McKinleyville, even more activity. Rio Dell, more activity. But we're going to be looking through the Sierra Nevadas, and you're going to, this really blew my mind, the amount of activity through the Sierra Nevadas and in Northern California that we're showing you on the next program. And we're going to be back to load that one up right after this, is really quite dramatic. The biggest increase I've seen in the, I guess it's over 5 years now that I've been watching the Cascades, and 4 years or something for California. Very, very, just an incredible jump in activity. So we've got a subduction process underway, and the volcanic evidence and the plate shift evidence, the tremors, the small earthquakes, the activity at sites, volcanic sites that are not normally active. This is all pointing to a creep process, that we've had an earthquake that was a subduction earthquake, that it set off a chain of events, and instead of having a slow slip in Southern California, we're having a fast creep event. I expect it's going to slow down again, but right now it's busy. So we're going to get back to this same activity, but it's more dramatic, coming up in the next program. So come back in if you're interested in this. And we'll see you shortly. And if you like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, share us with your friends, and go with God's blessing, because we have no cause to fear when we have faith in the Lord. Bye for now.